All right, welcome everybody to another Boss Talk. Today I am hosting. My name is Jacobson Valentine. I'm the Executive Director of Feed the Mass. And to my left, would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Andre Petit, and
But let's kind of get this started. You guys were talking about marketing and branding, and I think when it comes to branding and marketing, it is, I would say, fundamental to all businesses. It is something that if you are wanting to, not even just your businesses, but also how you market yourself to other people. If you're trying to start a relationship or a friendship, these are all super important things to how do you market yourself to be a good friend? How do you market yourself to be a good student? How do you market yourself to, honestly get a bigger allowance from your parents? Why should they give you a bigger allowance? I think that's pretty much what it really comes down to is how do I get more money from my parents? At least that's what I thought back in the day. So we're gonna go through and we're gonna pretty much just kind of tell you guys our story and how we kind of got into business and how I started Feed the Mass, how Andre started Fundamental Fitness, and then we're gonna ask some personal questions about personal branding and even branding of our own organizations. Sound good?
sounds good.
Sounds good. All right, so Andre, tell us a little bit more about Fundamental Fitness and how it got started.
Yeah, great. So thanks for having me.
Yeah.
So first of all, I want to make sure if anyone has any questions, write them down, think about what's going on here. But one of the interesting things about business is that you might start off on a certain path, but life happens, right? And things start to shift, right? Mm-hmm. So for our business, our original thought was that we were going to be like a gym, like a 24-hour fitness or something like that. But the problem was I didn't know anyone that could write a check for $2 million. Does anyone know anyone that can write a check for $2 million, right? So that was a challenge. So what we had to do was find what they call like the most viable piece of that business that we could do on a smaller scale. And that was what when we talked about that. For us, it was the ability to do screening with people, to actually do evaluations with people, and to be able to help folks really just find out where they are, right? Because if you're gonna get on a fitness plan, you gotta know where you're at before you can figure out how to get where you want to go, right? Like if I'm trying to get over to your house, first thing you gotta ask me is, well, where are you, right? Because how can you tell me how to get there if you don't know where I'm coming from? So that was the foundation, and so that came into and became what we now call Fundamental Fitness Labs. And the idea is that we do evaluations, recommendations, and follow-up. So we help people get from where they are to where they want to go with their health, right? And what was interesting is in April of 2020, we were going to launch as an in-person physical evaluations in front of people. Does anyone know how that went for us? What do you think? Was in-person happening much in April of 2020?
No.
Right? And so the gentleman you're going to meet later, Kamal Rogers, was actually my tech guy. He's like, well, I guess we just got to go digital. And so now we went from being an in-person business to literally being digital health, which was not in our plan. So as you can imagine, our goal of what we want to do never changed, but how we were going to do it and how we were going to present it obviously changed dramatically. So that's kind of a quick rendition, at least, of how we got to where we are today. Right?
Perfect. Yeah. Love it. So Feed the Mass, I started Feed the Mass about 6 years ago. All I wanted to do was teach kids how to cook. I didn't have any plans for summer schools. I just wanted to spend my everyday just teaching people how to make, good food. And I think when it comes to education of nutrition and food, it was never really something that was accessible as a kid for me. I think I was probably the last class to ever do home ec, and then they canceled the program for every student after that. So a lot of kids never had home ec, let alone nutrition class. And I thought it was really super important that kids have access to those things. So I started doing cooking classes. I started a nonprofit. For me, I really wanted to market this to specifically families, mainly because I think when it comes to cooking, we do it all the time. We eat at least 2 to 3 times a day. And I think if you don't know what you're putting into your body, you're at a point where it can be at a disadvantage because you could start having health problems later, and that's not really fun. So we really wanted to get the kids and families involved in cooking. Evolution, a couple years later, the pandemic rolls around. We actually moved into this classroom, and the pandemic hit. So that means no more in person. So the marketing side of my head was like, well, what is the thing that we can do? We can't do online classes, mainly because we didn't have the funding, we didn't have the ability. But the one thing that we as a organization believed in was empowering people through food. So we decided that we wanted to cook for people and empower them because we knew that a lot of families were at home. Some families didn't know how to cook. Some families didn't have the ability to eat, healthy. So we wanted to create a way for families to get free, healthy meals to their house. And that started our second program, which is our FED program. This pivot really was crucial because we didn't know how an organization, let alone a business, could run if there was no product to sell. And our product was in-person cooking classes. So we really focused on what is another product that is similar to what we're doing that we can do effectively, and it was our FED program. So this year, during the pandemic, we did about 6,000 meals per week, which is huge for the amount of people that we're trying to help every day. And the way we marketed it during that time was really, if you need food, we will give it to you. There was no barriers, there's no access limits or anything like that. And that was kind of our branding, was really we had to kind of pivot our mission a little bit in the sense of we went from just educating to, serving our community and feeding our community. So that was super important. And then now we are doing, last year we did our first summer program and started doing digital classes where people on YouTube can be able to see our classes. And it was a really big hit. A lot of people loved it. Last year we had about close to 80 kids come through our summer program, and people were doing it online, and it was a really amazing opportunity. So for us, it was very much a situation of kind of like resilience this is, unfortunately things happen, and then what is the next step to kind of overcome those things, and that's what we kind of did. So that's kind of where we're at in Feed the Mass. You guys are here now, and we're doing another summer program on a daily basis, which is huge, and we appreciate everybody, being a part of this. And now we get to kind of pivot even more and provide holistic education where it includes financial literacy, urban agriculture, cooking, fitness, all these things, which I think is super helpful and gives at least everyone in our community opportunity to gain some wisdom on things that they normally would never have wisdom for, which I think is huge. So let's get into our first, the first question is, Andre, what is the story behind you finding your brand?
So that's a great. So it's funny because when I first walked up, you all were doing that quiz on the logos, right? And I did that quiz too because I saw the video and I was kind of fun. I didn't do it all, but some of you did. I mean, that was amazing. I couldn't catch some of those. But what I find is interesting is when we think of brand, we typically first thing we think of is logo, right? And so that's one part of our brand is Fundamental Fitness Labs. But I think for us as a company, we're really focused on this. Was interesting when I watched the talk, is what do we stand for, right? That's the big deal. And for me, because I'm as the founder, I got into Fundamental Fitness Labs because I realized that there's no one out there helping people figure out how to become healthy, right? So think about this. Who do you know in the world out there? You know all these logos. Who's out there actually helping people understand how to be healthy? What company?
No one.
No one. I mean, like you can think of like the gyms, right? 24-hour fitness, but do they actually help people past giving them a space?
No, they just say, hey, lift this.
Yeah. Come on in here and do what you want, right?
Pay for the gym membership that you're probably never going to use and come in here once a month.
Or never, right? I love
Come in here once a month, feel inadequately.
Oh, wow. That's hard.
That's deep.
That is deep, right? But
That's just going to the gym.
That's how-
realistic.
That's how people feel a lot of times, right? And so what our goal from a branding standpoint is, how do we become a place that people actually can trust to help them learn the things they need to learn to get from where they are to where they want to be? And really what we say is where they need to be. Because where you want to be and where you need to be may not be the same place. It could be that you want to be way further than you need to be, right? Because you want to climb Mount Everest. You don't need to climb Mount Everest to be healthy. That's a different game, right? But some folks want to, where they want to be maybe isn't as far as they need to be because they don't want to work that hard. Right, so our job is, and we have what we call wellness guides, right? Because the idea is we want to help people by having a relationship. Because are you going to change a behavior from an app? Really?
Not really.
I mean, is that going to help you? I mean, the apps are great if you're already doing the thing, right? They're great at tracking stuff. They're great at being efficient, but they're not really great at changing behavior. So the other thing from our brand is that we're a people-centric business. And when you meet Kamal later, it's going to be fun because he's the tech side of Fundamental Fitness Labs, and I'll let him tell that story a little bit. But the reality is we're using technology to engage people more, as opposed to what are most companies using technology for? Would you say? Yeah. What do you think?
Some companies are using it for innovation. Some companies are using it just for everyday tasks.
Right. And the everyday task part's a huge thing. We'll talk about that. Yeah.
Researching new technologies for like medical,
Right.
Military.
Okay. So again,
Researching new technology.
Yeah.
Like
What do you
that.
got?
Some businesses use like could use online apps
Mm-hmm.
to do meetings
Yep.
or to make presentations.
Right. Exactly. Right.
Perfect.
And that's interesting you say that because again, we were supposed to do this in person, and imagine what if in Zoom. By the way, Zoom had like a couple million clients, and then COVID hit, and they went to like from 2 million to 20 million like in 2 days. Talk about a stress on your system, right? But to that point, we wouldn't be able to do our business if we weren't able to use other technologies, right? So what we look at is how do we use technology so that we can actually engage people more? Who said something about simple tasks? Was that you that said the task, right?
Everyday tasks.
Everyday task, right? Because that's the thing is like there's so many tasks we have to do as humans that we either don't like to do or we're not really good at because they're boring. So we can let the computer do that work. But then we can interact with people because our computer's really very good at interacting with you. Really?
No.
Has anyone like tried to have tried to find something out and they got a bot and the bot just kept sending you to another bot? Isn't that fun? Don't you love that, right? Instead of just a human being, because you can actually answer. Because if you ask a question, the bot doesn't answer. It just spins in circles. Oh, that's so awesome. That is exactly it, right? That is exactly it.
I find it funny. You ever see that video where somebody takes this really dumb app with this strange blob creature, and they make it do this thing where it goes, my voice is higher than your voice, and it takes the same app on a different phone. They put them together, and eventually it devolves into,
So the apps are competing with each other, basically?
yeah, because they hear the voice prompt, so then they they have their voice be more high pitched. But since the other one, since neither of them have limit, it just devolves into screeching.
That's
Interesting.
exciting. Now see, again,
Just dogs are running everywhere. It's
Right.
like, what is
What's
wrong?
going on?
It's like,
So the other side, and I'll finish up here and I'll let Jacobson talk. But the other side of our business, so the brand is, and our focus is, we help people get from where they are to where they want to be, right? That's all. It's about prevention and help. Our logo, and I was trying to pull it out on my computer. Maybe I'll see if I can do it now. I'm just going to pull it up and show it to you because it'll be better. So I'll let you go
Cool.
from there.
No, no worries. So, our story about finding brands. So, I didn't really have a lot of people weighing in on my branding when I first started Feed the Mass. It was really just a situation of like, what is the thing that I want to accomplish? So when it came to logos, before we even have a logo, it was literally, what do we call this thing I want to do? And there was a lot of time where I was just sitting there like contemplating and talking, and what came by is like very simple, like what is the main thing I was trying to solve. And I think the biggest thing was people weren't getting fed, and I wanted to give them the ability to be fed properly and in a mass scale. So when I came up with Feed the Mass, it was really kind of clicked, because it was very much a situation of like, this is the culmination of like the actionable item that I want to give to the community, and that everyone who comes to our class, they will be fed through these classes. The next part of that was finding the logo, which honestly, I'm going to be 100% honest, I just found a random logo that was like, oh, fruits and vegetables, and I was like, boom, that's it. Which sometimes isn't always the best idea, but it actually kind of works out in the end, because now that's kind of the logo synonymous to Feed the Mass, and everybody knows that logo and it's on the screen right now online. So it's very synonymous to what we are and who we are. When people just see and it's a tomato, carrot, and spinach leaves, people see that and they're like, oh, that's Feed the Mass. So it's kind of cool, but it does take some time. It does take some patience. Next thing that we had to find out was like, for our branding, was like definitely our mission. Like, what do we stand for, and what are the next steps to like getting everyone on the same page? And when I came up with like empower through food, it was just very honestly like the word, because one of the things that I did was I actually was like, what is another word for like giving people strength and like power? And you just find a thesaurus on Google, and empowerment was the biggest, was like literally the first word, and I was like, empower through food. And I think it's one of those things where everybody can kind of understand like how to be empowered, and like empowering someone is something that isn't just immediate, but is a long-lasting effect. And that's what we really wanted to do as an organization. So that's kind of how the story came. As crazy as it sounds, it was just me literally Googling and going online and thesauruses, and trying to get my idea and put it in a way where I can actually like say, this is what we represent in the fewest words, in the most simplest of minds. And when anybody asks what Feed the Mass is, I can literally just say, we empower through food, and they kind of have I would say, a feeling of understanding. And I think that's kind of like what we're looking for.
Can I say something on that line?
Yeah.
As you brought that up, I realized, so again, going back to our name, Fundamental Fitness Labs, right? And what we're constantly talking with clients, it's always about the fundamentals. Being healthy is about fundamentals. We have all these gimmicks and all these other things coming out, but at the end of the day, do you know how to adjust your weight? You burn more calories than you bring in, and your weight goes down. You burn less calories than you bring in, and your weight goes up. I mean, that's really pretty simple, right? Now, you can lose and gain weight and not be healthy or unhealthy. That's a whole other conversation, too. And again, that's a fundamental thing that people don't understand. So that's part of the thing with the name, is that we keep focusing not only the client, but also the organization back on what it is we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So
Definitely.
that's huge. Thank you for reminding me about that.
All right. So let's go to our next question, which is going to be very simple. How has your branding changed for you? I think you kind of talked a little bit about how your branding changed, especially because you started right when the pandemic started, so it
Yeah.
changed dramatically.
Yeah, and I think the other side, and that's the other thing I wrote down on my notes, is there's a difference between, do you understand, there's a difference between B2B and B2C, right? Business to consumer is what most of us know from a branding and a sales standpoint, right? That's most of those logos were consumer products. But there's also business to business, which actually spends way more money, and people don't even realize that, right? Because businesses are spending money for services, software, all sorts of different things, right? Chairs, all these tables, right? That's a business to business sale, completely different game. And so when you're branding and marketing, that's also an important thing, is who's your audience, right? And so we had to look at that as pandemic hit, talking to businesses presented a huge opportunity, but it also presented a, okay, well, that video or that flyer, that thing we did for the individual consumer isn't going to fly in the C-suite or with the CEO or an HR person. So that's also, so you may have different branding depending on what your audience is.
Definitely. And I think for us, our branding and marketing kind of really changed as the older we got. In the beginning, it was very much branding, and really focusing on what we do, how we do it, what we do it, how we do it, what we do it, how we do it. And then the more we got older and the more we realized, like, kind of like what you said, it was more of a, like, we were really focusing on the business to customer, because as a nonprofit, our job is to serve our community. Like, whatever we do as a nonprofit, we serve our community. So when we were really focused with business to consumer, but what we really didn't know and what we kind of realized was we really needed to focus on creating partnerships with other organizations. And that was super huge, because then we're also not even just creating reliability with, you know, the people that we are working with, but other organizations are telling other people about what we're doing, which creates more customer bases. So when it comes down to it, like, our branding needs to be very focused and on point in the beginning, and then we're able to market ourselves to not even just customers, but also other businesses and organizations, to create partnerships, to create ability to help each other, which I think is super huge, because people don't really realize, especially so as someone who comes from the restaurant industry, where it was always competition. It was always, we're trying to be the best restaurant in Portland versus being the, working with other restaurants and kind of promoting other restaurants. It was always about our restaurant's the best, our restaurant's the best. When it comes to nonprofits, and actually even modern day, I would say even modern day businesses now, it is really focusing on who you collaborate with, which is like kind of co-branding, which actually goes easily into my next question is, how do you figure out who's the best person to kind of co-brand with? Because I think that's co-brand or partner with, because I think as a brand, your brand is synonymous to one thing, and then when you think about, like, hey, I want to go into partner with another organization, what is your process through that?
Interesting enough, we partnered with Feed the Mass, right? And so this is kind of a funny thing in that. And I think for Fundamental Fitness Labs, it's two parts. The first one is stay in your lane, right? And for me, as a business person and also having done consulting, I find a lot of businesses get out of their lane and then they start wobbling because they don't know who they are and what they do, because they want to get paid, especially for not-for-profits, right? They want to get paid, so they just do whatever's bringing them the money. So when we looked at partnering with Feed the Mass, it was like, what are the things that we want to do that we just don't have the bandwidth for, that we know are important, right? And so when we think about Fundamental Fitness Labs and we do nutrition evaluations and we do physical evaluations, well, when people, maybe they need to learn how to cook because we're telling them what to do and they don't know how to do that, well, that's just another, no, we're not going to lift that thing. So we're going to go, hey, I know someone who can teach you how to do that, and now we got a partner we can work with as far as that goes. So I think it's about alignment. And then the other thing, the more important thing, or as important thing, is alignment in beliefs as an organization, right? Yeah. Because there are organizations that might want to partner with us, but we don't want, again, it's a brand thing, and we don't want people thinking we're like them. Yeah. Right. And so Feed the Mass has a reputation of taking care of people, and it's like, yeah, we want that reputation, because we also want to work not just with organizations, but also in a business sense, for profit companies, but also we want to work and do community work with our wellness. Yeah. How do we go in the community and help? And so having a relationship with the community organization obviously gives us credibility as well. So. Yeah, and I think it's just one of those things that, like, for us, we really focus on what are the organizations that we can also help empower, and we can also help
give a leg up. And one of the things that we became really good at is creating video content. And I think a lot of organizations don't have that ability to do video content, to create their own video about who they are and what they do. A lot of people, I mean, even you guys all have your phone and you go on your Instagram and be like, this is what I'm doing today. Who here does that? Nobody? Ace does? You don't have a phone? Oh, okay.
Wow, cool.
In our age.
What? Nobody on your age group ever goes online and say, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm eating.
11-year-old
I mean, if you ask somebody
get
caked
on his
in
phone
makeup that
and
looks
tell
like that, then they'll
everyone
probably say yeah.
what he's doing at that exact time, what he's eating,
Okay.
where he is.
I guess
It's an older teenage
I guess it's
thing.
an older teenage thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Actually, if you look for a kid our age that's wearing eyeliner, they'll most likely say yes.
Oh, okay, that's very specific. But I think it really is a situation of like when we're talking about like co-branding, it's really like very much like a belief. It's also a situation of like what is a benefit for both organizations, because I think some partnerships are very much a, hey, I would love for you to come and do this for us. Please, it'd be super helpful for our organization, but there's nothing they can really do for us. So at that point, it's not really a partnership. It's just like, hey, can you do something for us?
Right.
And I think it's very super important when you're talking about co-branding or partnerships. It is very much a reciprocal. You do something, we get something. You do something, we get something. Versus a transactional where they are literally just coming to you because you are what are they called? Not really consultant, but they're purchasing your time, or they're asking you to donate your time, and that's very transactional. All right. Now, I always go with this one. What are some bad partnerships that like you have been in, and not even just in fundamental fitness, but maybe in a past organization that you may have worked with, that just was not a good partnership, and why was it not a good partnership of co-branding? I would say.
How much time we got?
We got exactly 1 hour.
Oh, beautiful. I think, yeah, I've been in a few situations. Mainly, it was more of organizations or individuals trying to partner that really didn't. It was a lack of agreement, I guess. I think it's like when you have a conversation with someone and you think you're having a conversation, and then later on you realize that they weren't hearing what you were saying, and you probably weren't hearing what they were saying, and you made a decision based on that misinformation.
Definitely.
I think that's typically because for me, I've always want to know that, to your point, I always want to know that it's a reciprocal relationship, right? And so I go in with that feeling, and so I have those conversations, but sometimes those conversations don't translate during the meeting.
Definitely.
And so I think that's been the biggest challenge, is just not having thinking you had agreement on something that you didn't have agreement on.
Definitely.
And I just had one happen just 2 days ago.
Dang.
It was like, this is what we're going to do. They're like, yeah, this is what we're going to do. And then we got ready to do it, and they're like, no, we can't do that. I'm like, oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So who here has actually been in like maybe a friendship where you thought everything was good, and then all of a sudden, like, you realize, oh, this is not a good friendship? Tell me about it.
I had a friend.
Oh, okay. Let's go with Ace.
I had a friend who was really controlling and would always hit me a lot. But I didn't.
That's not friend.
It's
But
okay.
I didn't want to give up our friendship because when they were nice, we had a really good time, and they were really confident, and I was confident at that time, so then I just stayed friends with them.
Ah.
Wow,
And
that's
and
so,
But we
yeah.
there's so many layers.
still friends now, and they've changed because we were like younger then, but they have changed a lot.
Okay.
Okay. Good. Either one of you guys. Who wants to go first?
Okay, let's go.
Who wants to go first?
So he's like always bossy,
Mm.
and like, like really bossy, and it's like I didn't really
Yeah.
Do people being bossy?
And I think,
Not not that much.
yeah, and I think when there's situations where you're in a relationship where someone is more bossier than the other, it is very easy to have a partnership where one person feels that they have more control over the partnership. And when it comes to a partnership, it's very much a 50-50 kind of situation. It's like, I'm in a partnership with you, you're in a partnership with me, we're in this together. Like, our job is to work through everything together, unless it's specific, like, hey, you are really good at this, and I'm gonna leave that to you. But when it comes to decisions and, like, one have leveraging power over the other, it's never really, I would say, a safe place to be in a relationship. And I think, one thing that Ace was talking about was, the communication of, hey, this is not something I want, and being able to communicate to that person and being like, hey, this is not, healthy for me. I don't feel safe. I don't like this. That is super important in all partnerships, because it's not also a situation of like you want to end the partnership. Sometimes it's just a situation of misunderstanding or misunderstanding of roles, or just not understanding what's like important, and that like this is that you both feel that this is valuable, but someone's doing something wrong, and that's okay to kind of work through those things. All right, who else has an example? I'm gonna get him in the back, and then you're next.
Alright, well, I used to be friends with this kid named Max.
Mm-hmm.
We were really good friends. We would roughhouse, we'd have fun like playing pools, go to a lake, walk around, stuff like that. But after a while, he just started like, you know how friends are supposed to, friends are supposed to get along, friends are supposed to talk to each other, something bad's happening, you let the other friend know. Yeah, well, every time I said something bad that happened to me, he'd go, yeah, well, you have it better than I did because this happened to me. And it's like, and
Yeah.
it's trying to outweigh somebody's emotions with their own.
It's like
Yeah.
similar.
So yeah, no, and that's another thing you can kind of relate is.
I thought that'd be good. He's
And
trying
he
to cheer
said,
you up.
and he would always go, he would always, like, every time I pointed it out to him, he'd get mad at me for it.
Yeah.
He'd be like, I'm the victim here because you're calling me out for this. It's like,
Yeah.
I've had
So-
a lot of friends like that.
So it's a weird situation when everyone starts playing the I have it worse game, because especially in business, it's not always a situation that we're here to compete on, who has it the worst and who has it the hardest. We're all trying to build each other up, and I think when we talk about relationships, it should always be a situation of I'm in here to make it better for both of us, and when we are both going through a hard time, let's figure out ways that we can both get through this. And I think even in business, there are going to be tough times where maybe they lost a client or their sales are down, and it's very hard. And then it might be a situation of like even the pandemic, like we can't do what we normally do, and we have to kind of change everything. It is very much a situation where when you're in a friendship or a business relationship, to kind of identify like, hey, we're not going to go down this route, and establishing like this is what happens when we meet adversity. And I think a lot of businesses don't really talk about that when they enter partnerships. Like take for instance our partnership with Fundamental Fitness Labs. We have a clear communication. If things are not going right, we immediately address it. And I think it's one of those things that like we also understand, like when we address it, it's like, how are we going to overcome this? And we come to it in the sense of we're not angry at anybody. We're going to try to be constructive about it. And I think that's super huge. All right, we got one more, and then I'm going to answer this question.
So, if he wasn't really a bad friend, or he didn't really do anything bad, it's just he's sort of out of touch with reality.
Okay.
There's this one event. The kid's name is Axel, by the way.
You don't have to tell people's names, but don't put them on blast.
Anyway, there's this one event where we were at the talent show, and at the end, the whole school is looking for him. We have no idea where he is, so we're really worried. We go outside, check on the car, and there he is, whacking a bush with a stick. the entire school is looking for him. He probably knows. He doesn't really care.
Yeah.
He's
And I think
perfectly content doing whatever he's doing.
definitely. And I think it's one of those things like managing expectations is kind of like what it kind of sounds like. Saying like, hey, as a business partner or as a friend, I'm asking you, hey, could you like be there? And then you say, oh, I'm gonna be there. Don't worry, I'm gonna be there. Don't worry, I got this covered. And then it's at the time to do it, and you're like, where are you, bro? Like I'm lost. What's going on?
Really like that. He wouldn't really answer anyway.
Well, I mean, either way, it's one of those situations where you expect him to answer, or you expect him to be there, or.
I mean, he is a good friend, but sometimes.
And that's the thing. I think that's the super important part about all business relationships, or even any relationship as is. When you are co-branding or you are becoming a partner, like I'm pretty sure people are good, but some people just have not the fundamentals to bring it back, the fundamentals of being a good partner or being in a good relationship or being a good friend. Those are super important to have when it comes to co-branding. My experience when it comes to co-branding, they both go back good and bad. I've been in situations where I have had amazing relationships, much with Andre and Fundamental Fitness, and I've had situations where it just kind of ends in, we are no longer working together, we no longer talk to each other, we're no longer friends, and I've had everything in between. Those situations happen. A lot of it is also goes with maturity or just even communication. Some people just don't communicate. So when it comes to co-branding, having expectations in the beginning, meaning this is what I expect from this relationship or this co-branding. This is what I expect you to do. This is what I'm going to be doing. This is how we're going to adhere to adversity. This is how we're going to overcome situations. And if there's ever a time that we want to split, we have the ability to do that. And no hard feelings. And this is just more of a being civil and mature. Because I've even been in friendships that I've had for years, and sometimes you just grow apart, and that's okay to be like, nah, this isn't working for me anymore. I'm done, and it's unfortunate, but it's very much a situation. All right, we are at our last question, and the last question I have for you, Andre, is: you have a chance to talk to yourself at 16. What would you say to yourself about your own personal brand? Not your business, your own personal brand.
Well, that's an interesting question. I would, the thing that I would say, and I've actually, fortunately been able to live this my life already, is just be yourself, right? I think the one thing, and this is the one thing I do mentoring occasionally, and one of the things I tell young folks and not so young folks is you're the best you the world has ever seen. Right? And I think a lot of us try to be somebody we're not, or try to be like this other person, and there's no way I can ever be, I'll never be even close to being as good at Jacobson as Jacobson can be. So why should I even try? I'm just you're gonna set yourself up to fail. But I can be the best me. Jacobson can never be as good as me at being me. There's no one in this room can be as good at you as being you. And so I taught that, I was fortunate that I was told that at some level from my parents growing up.
Yeah.
And I was able to translate that out. And it's funny when your parents tell you to do something like be yourself all the time, and then you do something that's being yourself that they don't want you to do, and you get to throw it back at them like, hey, I'm just being me. Right? That was a lot of fun. I did that a couple times, right?
Love it.
But yeah, I think that's the thing I would say, and watch that, because everyone's trying to make you something that makes them comfortable.
Yeah,
Right?
so true. I think for me, the one thing I would tell my 16-year-old self would be learn more and shut up more. Because I always felt that like every time I learned something new, I always had to tell everybody. I always had to be like, this is what I learned, and now I'm efficient at it, and I'm like super smart about it. But I've learned that like when it comes to my own personal branding, it's very much a situation of Like I want to be really good at like whatever I'm doing, and I value being as much of an expert or as much of as efficient as it as possible. But the only way I can do that is actually by doing the work. I think once I get to a point where I'm okay at it, it's like I need to show it off. I need to be like, hey, look at my thing I can do. I can do this. And I think it's very much a situation of like I actually, if I want to tell people that I'm really good at something, I actually have to do and commit to the work and that discipline. And part of that discipline is learn as much as you can about that one thing you're really passionate about. For me, it was always about cooking. I every day cook. I learn new things when I'm online, even on TikTok. I save cooking recipes and cooking techniques. I teach it to you guys, all the new things that is happening in the world. But it's always a situation of I never really tried to say I am the expert. In fact, sometimes I hate when people call me chef. I'm not gonna lie. And it's actually also kind of puts me in this situation. Like I don't like people like feeling like they can never cook for me as a chef. So my personal branding is like I tell everybody I'm like I like food. Like I'm a food lover. I love cooking. I love trying other people's food. I love learning about other people's food. As much as I am a chef, that is by trade, I'm not one of those like I'm gonna go and like judge your food chef.
You're not
A judge.
So not like Master Chef.
I'm not a master chef. No, not at all. There's so many more things I want to learn.
It's this type of person that only reviews food.
I'm not a food critic.
Ramsay?
Are you talking about
Food
a
critic.
Yeah.
Yes, a food critic. I'm not a food critic. I think people confuse a chef with a food critic all the time, and I'm not that. But I would definitely tell myself that to be more quiet and really learn, and then also surround myself with people that are actually better at it than I am. And that's something that I always felt that like as a kid I wanted to be around people that I can be like, hey, watch me, and I'm gonna lead you. But I think as a young person, surrounding myself by leaders, like true experts, is going to be something that's going to benefit my brand so much longer in my life than having to be a 30-year-old saying, hey, could you be my mentor? You guys actually, what's interesting for young people like you guys, you actually have the cute benefactor. People say, oh, this cute little kid wants to learn from you. Of course I'm spending time with kids because they are at this point where they want to learn as much as they can. And I think it's very, I would say, less intimidating to teach a kid than it is an adult because adults are already set in their ways. So I think it's one of those things like, you are the sponge of everything. So take that time to put yourself around good things to sponge up.
It is possible to do two versus that.
True. That is a cuteness factor. All right, so that is all we have for Boss Talks. This is your time for Q&A. What are some things that you guys want to know about marketing and branding that we can share with you? Even your own personal branding, because I don't know who here is going to be starting their own business in the next 5 years.
It is important to keep a consistent theme when designing, right?
Yes, yes,
It has to be,
it is
simple.
It is
Simple is memorable.
Yes, and I think it's like when it comes to like themes, we always have like 3 colors is the rule.
If you're stretching it, and then there's the grays and whites.
Exactly, and then I also think it's a situation of like it's okay to evolve. I think Pepsi itself has had like 4 remodels in the last like exactly. But it's very much a situation of the evolution of someone's brand is okay, especially when you're young and you're learning things. Like your brand could be, I like to wear anime clothes every single day, and then by the time you get into college, you're like, I want to wear polos and shorts every single day. For me, my branding was all the way up to high school, flip-flops. It could be 32 degrees outside, flip-flops. I could be about to go on a track meet, flip-flops. I hate wearing shoes if I didn't have to. So like my own personal branding was very much the flip-flop guy because I'm from Hawaii. So like if in Hawaii I didn't wear shoes, so flip-flops was a godsend when I came here. So it was very much a situation of like everything changes. My style has changed even as an adult. Every year I feel like I do a little bit of evolving and cleaning out of my closet. I literally threw away 15 graphic tees last week. So needless to say, yeah, I'm evolving as a man and, going now to the dad bod polo shirts. Can't go wrong. Or the fun, creative, monotone colored with the little things on the shirt.
little
Palm
palm
trees
Flip-flops
shirts.
because I have unusually wide feet.
Oh,
Yeah.
so the shoes will mess with you. That's not
Yeah,
comfortable.
the
It's
pair of
never
shoes that
fun.
I'm wearing, they got like extra wide setting on like the store or whatever.
Yeah.
I like flip-flops mainly because, well, my feet don't rub up against the sides of them because there are no sides.
True. No sides.
And you can just pick them off.
Exactly. Well, if they didn't create the no shoes, no shirt policy, I would be shirtless with no shoes. But
No.
they created it specifically for me.
I think like Jacob said, we need to help you out.
Exactly.
Fill
All right. So everybody at home, thank you guys so much. Leave a comment down below about if some questions you may have. We're gonna be going through them and answering them. Thank you everyone at home. Thank you Andre so much for being here. Unfortunately, Kamau couldn't be with us today. Yeah. We'll maybe have to interview him another time.
Yeah, let's bring him in.
But thank you guys at home and have a wonderful day.